So I run an SEO agency, fairly sizable already. We're about, as of today, actually 18 people. I think we have found certainly a certain niche that work well in this kind of new age of Google. I don't think Google's dead. I think ChatGPT search, Perplexity, some of these kind of AI driven search engines are incredibly interesting. I think probably I spend probably about 50% of my searches now in my personal life I will do in ChatGPT. There are things that it's good for, there's things that it's not so good for. And so, I think SEO in its current format, Google in its current format is definitely going to change. But when you look at the results on, if you search something in GPT search and look at the top, it's going to be very similar to what you find in Google because ultimately you have to write great content that the AI can consume.
Welcome to the Grow and Learn Podcast, your go-to source for expertise and insights on a variety of topics: business growth, leadership, technology, personal and business finance, and more. We've curated a vast network of business experts ready to address your company's most pressing challenges. From corporate growth strategy to leadership, marketing strategy, sales strategy, branding, customer relations, technology, AI, IT security, and beyond, we connect you to the best experts for your needs. Reach out to us for more information or schedule a call at grownlearn.org to explore how we can support you. You already introduced yourself as the CEO of Masse SEO. Maybe you can tell us a bit more. Some people don't know what the abbreviation SEO is. We have all kinds of experts listening to the podcast, and it's not necessarily marketeers who understand the abbreviations of marketing. So can you tell us a bit more about the traditional SEO and then what specifically you do with your company?
Yeah, for sure. So, search SEO stands for search engine optimization, which is a fancy way of saying getting your website to number one on Google. And that is both for your brand name, but I think much more interestingly, it's for all the different keywords that might bring or the different searches that might bring customers to your website. And so with Masse SEO, we have a kind of fairly unique approach to that, which is we create a lot of content and we answer every question a customer might have. And that's something that we do for kind of cutting edge technology companies and ultimately help them kind of grow and get there first. And so they do that because SEO is just still, and even today in the kind of advent of AI, I think it's still probably the most reliable, organic traffic channel where you can build it up and then, for months, for years, it can continue to pay dividends, send you customers every day. And I think especially versus a channel like ads, which is, another kind of common traditional channel, those customers tend to be a much better fit for your business than what you might find on something like social or ads or something like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of you lead a team of 18 at the moment? What kind of customers do you serve? Because we perceive that SEO is only used by smaller companies, but you're also serving large clients. Can you tell us a bit more about the companies you serve and your development since you launched Masse SEO has been tremendous?
Yeah, we've kind of been pretty quick out the gate. So we worked with companies who are both like fairly small, by which I mean they're maybe at like a Series A funding stage. They have a few million in funding, they have some customers, and now they need to grow. And quite a few of those kind of companies, we started working with them maybe a year ago. They've already grown and raised more funding and become bigger companies. A lot of the companies we work with are really, really fast growing. So there's a lot of those kind of small companies, and that's very much where we got started. We started, I think now about not quite a year and a half ago, a little less than that. Last May, July is kind of when we got started. And we grew really, really quickly because we were able to get results for these kind of companies that are really at the cutting edge of technology. But now that that's happened and now that we've grown so quickly, we're now able to service much bigger companies, national pharmaceutical brands, national kind of networking companies, etc. And so I think SEO is absolutely good if you're a small company. I would actually argue it is a better channel if you're a larger company. you can typically own more of it. You typically have a bigger brand, which is going to help with SEO. And so it can really move the needle quickly for a small company, but it can, you can really turn a tanker and move the ocean with a big company doing SEO.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you caught the last train of Google search SEO in the past year and a half? Because in the past year, search has moved more and more to ChatGPT. And how has your work transformed with the pickup of ChatGPT search rather than Google search?
Yeah, I think we've been to some extent lucky. We're really deliberate with some of the techniques that we use, but something that Google's well known for is several times a year they have these things we call a core update, and that is when like Google just changes its algorithm for how it decides who's going to rank where on SEO. And if you're an SEO person, it's like your worst nightmare. You log on, you find out Google's putting out this update, you refresh to see if your clients have been killed, essentially, or if they're doing well. And we've been really, really lucky in that over the last year, our clients do really well out of every core update. Every single time we have a core update, all of our clients go up and to the right in terms of growth. And so where I'm going with that is, I think we have found certainly a set of techniques that work well in this kind of new age of Google. I don't think Google's dead. I think ChatGPT search, Perplexity, some of these kind of AI-driven search engines are incredibly interesting. I think probably I spend probably about 50% of my searches now in my personal life I will do in ChatGPT. There are things that it's good for, there's things that it's not so good for. And so, I think SEO in its current format, Google in its current format is definitely going to change. But when you look at the results on, if you search something in GPT search and look at the top, it's going to be very similar to what you find in Google, because ultimately you have to write great content that the AI can consume. You have to demonstrate to the AI that your content is authoritative. And that's really the same thing that Google's looking for. So I think the speed of this change has really caught the SEO industry off guard. But I think, agencies like ours, other agencies are figuring out how to react to it. I think it's going to continue to change quickly, but search is always going to be there, right? Like most of what you're doing is asking a question. Whether you ask that to Google or ChatGPT or to something else, you're always going to be asking questions and trying to find out information. And so for SEO, it's just always going to be our job to figure out how do we make sure our information gets there in front of consumers first,
Mm-hmm. Is there a difference though between the ways Google ranks based on SEO? Because I know it uses keywords, so you need to, let's say, I've worked with a company that did SEO for me, and that wasn't it wasn't successful in my case. But it depends how it's done, I suppose. But I remember there were backlinks built. We had to pay for certain high-ranking backlinks for my site to be published. There needed to be a certain repetition of words in a blog. So I had to create a blog specifically for the purposes of SEO. There's a lot of optimization there based on keywords. Is there a difference between SEO now that the ChatGPT ranks, or is it just taking the highest ranked by Google?
So there's a lot of debate over this, and AI is kind of the thing fueling that debate right now. But even if you go back 5 years, 10 years, everybody was always debating what is Google looking for now, and the answer is essentially always content and backlinks. They're always looking for something high quality that is going to educate the reader and be helpful to the reader, and then they're looking for backlinks as a signal to authority. And I think ultimately, if you look at the academic world, for example, in the academic world, if you publish a paper, that paper then might be cited by other papers. And, this is a hard and fast rule, but generally, the more citations your paper has, the more authoritative that paper is seen. And that system is really what Google replicated. And now it's become so advanced, but it does boil down to those principles. And so I always think you kind of have a lot of people debating these little tactics like how many times should you include a keyword, and should you have 5 links or 10 links or something? And and there's some merit to that. Some of that fine tuning is important. But if you're going to make SEO work, the most important thing you have to do is figure out, like, how am I going to answer the question? I guess in some ways it's like writing a book. You can get into details on what should my writing style be and how many chapters should I have, etc. But someone picked up your book to answer the question. Maybe it's about how to make more money or advance in your career, and your job as an author is to create the best source of that information. So I think that is ultimately still the same with Google. There's a lot of real kind of like middle of the curve techniques, but it's still the same thing. You have to answer the question in the best possible way. There are extra parts that you have to answer that question, from lots of different angles. But I think AI ultimately just feeds off of all the information that people like me and my team and many other people creating content on the internet make. It will learn off this podcast. It will learn off everything that's out there. And so the best way I think that you can be surfaced is really just to answer those questions. There are things that come out. If you look at the way that AI works, ultimately, this is really, really simplifying it, right? But I'm sure you know this already, but AI essentially works by trying to guess the next word in a sentence at a super basic level. And so if you want to kind of relate it back to typical SEO, keyword kind of research, or however you want to think about that, in some ways it's just about making your brand appear next to the word that you care most about. So if you're Spotify and you want people to associate your brand with being the number one place to come and listen to podcasts, you need everyone talking about that. You need content that says Spotify is great at podcasts. Spotify is where I find my podcast. You need people talking about that in social media. You need people creating videos about that. And so that gets complex. Like, where do you put that effort and how do you fine tune it? But at the end of the day, it just comes down to, you want to create more content about your brand, and you want to build up your authority to make these statements about your brand or your topic. It's always going to be the same thing, just in different flavors, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you see in the future a move towards the usage of other search platforms by ChatGPT? Let's say if 80% of the search traffic moves to ChatGPT, but it doesn't use only Google, but now it uses Bing and I don't know what other search engines there are out there. Do you optimize for these as well?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I have a funny, I guess, kind of two feelings on this. On the one hand, I'm terrified for that to happen because Google's so established. We do know how it works. We know what to do there. We have all these tools and processes, people who are educated on it. At the same time, I've obviously just said that, hey, it's not that different. And so in some ways, I don't worry about it. In some ways, it terrifies me. I still don't think Bing is ever going to be relevant. Do I think GPT search, Perplexity, these kind of like new generation AI platforms are going to be relevant search engines? I think the answer has to be yes. I use Google a lot because of my job. But I also now use ChatGPT a lot, and it's very, very hard to see a world, in the longer term where ChatGPT doesn't overtake that distribution. Now, Google might figure it out. Google might make search feel so much more like chat that it's just more usable. But I would be, so, on one hand, I'd be surprised if Google is gone in 5 years or 10 years. I just can't imagine it being unseated from its dominance. At the same time, I would be really surprised if more of the mass market, the general public, I'd be surprised if they have not started using more and more AI tools. And I think as you see it getting integrated into Windows computers, Apple iPhones, it becomes inevitable. At some point, people will realize how powerful ChatGPT is, or Claude, or any AI platform. And at that point, we're off to the races, and it's anybody's guess which platform is going to win and therefore dominate search.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. So how did you manage to accomplish such great results for your clients in such a short time? I'm asking because I was told previously that, for SEO to completely take an effect, it needs optimization for a period of, I don't know, 1 year or so. It needs a longer time to rank. You get incremental incremental lift in the ranking of Google, but the full effect is seen in a year or so, or it used to be this way. How is it now?
So this is kind of like a common misconception in the industry, not because it's wrong, because most websites do take that long, but because people think it is a factor of time, and it's not, it's a factor of output. So what I mean by that is, if we think about a traditional SEO agency that you or some of your listeners have engaged with, almost always they offer 4 articles per month. Sometimes it will be as little as two, sometimes it's six, at an absolute push, maybe eight. But it's, unless you're paying big money, it's very rarely more than that. And so we have this SEO timeline that's in the popular conscience that is based around this idea of you publish 4 articles per month, 1 article per week. And so over 12 months, you've published, if you're lucky, 52 articles. Maybe you didn't publish over Christmas or something, you've actually got like 48 or something. But the point is, you have this kind of level of output. The difference with what we do is we publish minimum 20 articles per month. And so that means that in a year, we have published 240 articles, sometimes more. That kind of like 52 articles for a typical agency I talked about, we do that in the first 3 months. And so what kind of happens is Google, two things happen, I think. Number one, Google just gets a better understanding of your website. You're publishing more content. So Google's coming back and checking it and thinking about it, ranking it more often. You're covering a topic much more deeply. And you're ultimately just given more shots on the goal to let Google increase your rankings. And so that's the primary method, is we create all this output. The second kind of reason that this happens is when you create 4 articles per month, and I've experienced this myself when I've been a client of SEO agencies, you want to answer the big questions. If you're trying to, I don't know, let's say you've got a car company and you're trying to create content about fixing a car. If you've only got 4 articles a month, you need to be asking the big questions like, how do I replace a tire? How do I change an engine? You don't have time to say, oh, I don't know, how do I fix the door bins? Or, how do I fix this particular model of headlight? And so the problem is twofold. Number one, you end up trying to compete on the same keywords as everybody else. The competition is super high. It gets more expensive to compete. And number two, you don't feel you have the budget to go after these small keywords. And quite often what we see with clients is the keywords that actually drive conversions are not giant keywords like how to change a tire that is going to get 100,000 searches every month. It is the keywords that get 20 searches every month, and they're really custom. It's like how to change the wing mirror on my Peugeot 2008 model XYZ, and maybe only 20 people search that, but if you have the perfect offer for them, all of them will buy it. And so there's this kind of dual thing happening here where on the one hand, we're going to have to have these small keywords that people get conversions from, get return on investment from, and ultimately Google can tell that these people are getting value out of their website. And the more that Google sees one part of your website being valuable, the more it's going to assume the whole website is valuable and start to move that up and give people the chance to see it on Google. So you combine that kind of small scale success with large scale content, lots of output, giving Google so much content to think about, you get results much, much quicker. And so this kind of idea that SEO takes 8 months, 12 months, is just because people are not producing enough content. And I think AI sent us backwards in some regards. I speak to a lot of other agencies. There are so many people who are going, great, we've got AI. Now we can just have less writers on the team. We'll create the same content output, but we'll just do less work and we'll spend less money and we'll make more of a profit. I think that works for people in the short term, but I think these agencies are toast in the long term,
So who creates the content for your clients? Do they create it themselves, or do you use AI to create the content?
No, so we create it ourselves. We have an entire team of in-house writers, and every time that we work with a client, they get a dedicated writer who's with them for months. We use AI to some extent. When we started out, we were really heavily using AI. We were just kind of generating an article and then editing it. And that surprisingly worked well, a year and a half ago. It doesn't work well anymore. Now we kind of see AI as a, think about like a tool for writer's block. Let's say I asked you to sit down and write an article about computer monitors. Now you know what a computer monitor is, you're looking at one, but you maybe have to go and figure out the basic information, like, well, what are the common sizes of a computer monitor screen? What are the different types, like OLED and LCD? What cables connect them together? And that information is not valuable. It's not a unique insight, but you need to know it to be able to write this article. AI is really, really good at that. AI is really good at compounding everything that humanity already knows about a subject and then laying it out. And so if you're writing without AI, you have to spend a couple of hours going and researching all that. And only then can you figure out what you even have to write about. Until then, you have writer's block. You don't know where to start. What we're really good at doing with AI, and we have a few kind of unique kind of proprietary approaches to this, but we're really good at skipping that research phase. And so our writers only really spend time actually writing and then researching like really unique facts, really in-depth stuff. Maybe if we're doing like a review of a piece of software, they actually have time to go and play with it, but they don't have to go and figure out what you need to know to exist in this category of software. They already have that information. So that's kind of one half of it. And then the second half is our writers just create so much content that not only do they know a lot about your company because they're writing so much about it, but they also, like, you just start to almost like see in content, you'll look at a blank document, you'll think about the topic and immediately figure out, well, hey, I wrote 2 of these yesterday, now I know exactly what I have to write here. We're almost just doing so much of it, and we keep our writers so focused on it that they just become very, very good at avoiding writer's block. And no author in the world is ever limited by their typing speeds, right? They're limited by their ability to think. So the more that we can help them do that thinking up front, the more that they can output, real original, valuable content.
Yeah. Okay. And very interesting. So, okay, got it. And why did you decide to skip the AI produced content entirely and to focus on human produced content? Is it because AI is punishing you when for using too much of AI generated content when it comes to ranking?
Yeah, I mean that's partly the answer, and in some way that's a post rationalization of what happened. What really happened is, the first like real client that we had for this, we had a couple of like iterations of our agency. The first real client we had for this kind of AI focused one was a client in the robotics space, and we were so excited when we got this client signed up. And then on day one,
I didn't understand. In which space?
Robotics.
Robotics. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they make like industrial robot arms. Yeah. And so we were so excited when we got this client because, hey, it's our first client for this new offer. And then immediately realized, oh, this is going to be hard. Like, I don't know anything about robotics. This is going to be difficult. So the AI was so useful at that point, because if I want to understand how a welding robot works, for example, the AI can tell me that. I don't know that, but the AI can tell me that. And now that I know some of that information, I can go and Google it. And now I kind of understand what people are talking about and know the terminology, etc. But the problem became, once I started doing lots of this content, suddenly I knew a lot about robotics. And I always make the joke, like, I am basically a robotics expert, but I've never once used a robot because I've just written about it so much. And what started to happen is the AI started to slow me down, because I already knew a little bit about this topic. I'm ready to start a new article. But then when I generate the AI version of it, it doesn't really look like what I had in my head. And so I'm not just editing AI content anymore. I'm starting to write the content from scratch and just using AI as a guide. And as time went on, this just became more of an effect. At this point, if I wanted to write an article for that client, I can just start doing it. I don't need to do research. I don't need to look into it. I mean, yes, I might need to go and pick out some references or some quotes, etc. But I know the topic inside out. And so AI just slows me down now. This is broadly the kind of effect that's happened for all of our writers. They come in, they struggle at first. They have to kind of start off slow, learn the client. But once they know it, the AI becomes more of a, it slows them down. It becomes more of a drag than it does a boost. And so over time, we've got better at figuring out, like, what is the exact balance? Like, how far can we use AI? Where do we use it in our processes? And how do we get it to the point where it adds value but doesn't slow down our writers? And so it's good that we developed that process because yes, you're correct. Google now is really good at detecting AI. I mean, we're really good at detecting AI. We can look at a sentence and I can tell if it's written by AI. We have a gigantic list in our business of just words that AI uses. And if anyone, if anyone's used AI before, they'll know like AI always says the word delve. Let's delve into this. Let's delve into that. We have so many of these patterns, these speech patterns, these words that we detect. And if we can do that, Google can definitely do it. So we want to stay as far away from, pure AI written content as possible.
I understand. Okay, so where are these articles published? On site of the client or on other linked websites?
A little bit of both. So the vast majority of our of our content is published on our clients' websites. That's what kind of brings in the traffic. We do build backlinks for our clients and do kind of digital PR for them. So sometimes we'll write a guest post or we'll contribute to an article or something like that. But the vast majority of content lives on the client's websites, and usually it starts out as just a plain blog. But as we start to build up a backlog of content or a catalogue of content, we then split it into what we call content neighborhoods. Maybe you have your guides section, maybe you have your resources section, your glossary, depending on what the content is that we're creating. So it can start to go from an ugly blog to a nice, well-designed kind of compendium at some point. But yeah, the majority of content goes on the website.
What is the role of video content? I understood that at some point Google really had a preference towards video content that is also featured in the blog. Is it still the case?
Yeah, for sure. We used to do some video content. We kind of shut that down to focus really hard on SEO. But we get so excited when a client has their own video content because this doesn't always happen. But broadly, if you write a blog and it's a good blog, it has to be a good piece of content, and you put a YouTube video on it, it just rockets to the top of Google. There's nothing worse than when we have a client who doesn't do video and we're looking at the keywords that we want to rank for, and the top results have videos because we just know that we're not going to rank there without videos. And this is obvious, but we also have a lot of clients who they do videos, but they want to host them on like Wistia or host them on their own servers. They have to be on YouTube. Google loves when you use Google's own products. So we always say, get them on YouTube, do your YouTube SEO, using the right titles, using keywords on YouTube the way that you would on content. Get that onto the right blogs, and the content usually does very, very well. It is super rare to see a client who has a good YouTube strategy struggle at SEO. They help each other so much.
Some of your clients, or at least your initial clients, were like really startups, Series A or even, I don't know, just founder capital startups. How did they afford you? Are you affordable for these startups?
It's always a big problem. So the reason we've occasionally worked with seed stage startups, but the only time we've worked with seed stage startups are they've either raised a good chunk of money, over $1 million, or they're already like really revenue generating. And we actually have a startup we work with who were pretty revenue generating. They just raised a Series A, and it's really exciting. We can kind of be part of that. There's two reasons for that. I mean, number one is, we do charge minimum 10,000 per month, and so we are expensive. Although we do a lot for that money, I think it's really hard to find anyone else who does the amount that we do. However, because we charge so much money, like I do not feel comfortable working with a startup who has not figured out who their customer is. So if we can come in and who you're selling to, maybe you've already reached some of those people with paid ads, for example, we feel really comfortable because we now know we can take that persona and we can just go find them at scale. What we are really uncomfortable doing is, hey, you've got this product, you don't really know who the customer is, you don't really know who can buy it. We're not a good fit for that because SEO, you'll just burn so much money because even though we can do SEO quickly, there is still a feedback loop. If we start working with a company today, their first sale from SEO is going to be at least 3 months away, maybe as many as 4 or 5 months away. Whereas if we do paid ads today, like you'll get a conversion on that tomorrow. You get that instant feedback loop. So we only really work with clients who can literally afford us because, they've raised a bit of funding or they have revenue, but then, can metaphorically afford us in the sense of we can get results for them. We know we can do that in a certain period of time. And, the joke we always make is like, we don't want to work with those clients who can't do that because they'll just stop paying our bills because we're not making them any money. And so our focus is not only on finding those clients, but is also picking clients where we are convinced that we can get them a return. Sometimes we'll work with a client and they do know who they want, but that person is just not reachable via SEO. It happens a lot in the consumer space. If you are, I don't know, I'm just pulling something out of thin air here, but if you're like a gaming company, SEO can work and you need some of it for brand recognition, but you're probably not going to bring a lot of your new video game users through SEO. They're going to find it in social or YouTube or something. And so we always try to work with clients who, have a real chance of winning with SEO, and that is essentially all of our clients.
Mm-hmm. And is the engagement that the client is expected to have for SEO constant optimization constant? Like, is there an end to this subscription process, or how does it work?
It depends, usually the clients who are going to do best on SEO are the clients who have what we call an infinite bucket of content. So we're speaking to a client at the minute who, funnily enough, is in the consumer space, and people use their website to just create like kind of AI videos and images and so on and so forth, and that's great because there will always be new content to write about. If a new movie comes out, people are going to go to this website and create like their own versions of the scenes or the characters, and that's great because that's infinite. And if the content is infinite, the growth is infinite. We have another client who, funnily enough, I was speaking to just a couple of hours ago. They are in a really, really niche industry, and I mean it's super niche, and that's good because we are totally dominating it. I've never seen any client grow so quickly, but there's just no competition here, so we're getting right to the top of Google for everything that we put out, and that's great because we're bringing customers. But the downside of that is we think by the time we get to around about Q2 of next year, there just won't be anything else to write about. So we're hoping that these guys, move into a new niche, or release some kind of new feature that allows us to create more content to find users for that feature. But yeah, for some clients, it's definitely, you're so niche and we write content so quickly. We really saturate a space really quickly. So yeah, it does happen, and there's some optimization work that goes on. There's some maintenance work. Content becomes stale or out of date. But for the real growth, as a company, you want to have an infinite bucket of content, because otherwise you have this channel that looks really great and then it hits a ceiling and you can't grow. And that's not good for a VC-backed startup.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting insights. What else, Nile, I haven't asked you that you want to share about SEO?
That's a good question. Yeah, what else do I want to say about SEO? I mean, look, I think I've done a few podcasts, and I think the question, the two questions that people always kind of have are number one, like, is SEO dead? And I've talked about that already, right? But I essentially feel that's a question that that people have every year. It's a bit like crypto right now. People thought crypto was dead in the last cycle. Bitcoin, I think, is up like 10% today already. SEO is the same. Every year I think people think, oh, it's really dead and gone this time. I don't know. Google make like whatever it is, like 75 billion a quarter. It's some like crazy amount of money. It's going to be a long time before they let SEO die. And so, my advice to founders or to companies of any size is you really should always be investing in it. And obviously I have to say that because I have an SEO agency, but that's why I have an SEO agency, because I believe this is always going to be there. And I think the second thing that people always ask me as well is, okay, that's great. How do I get started in SEO? If you can afford to work with an agency like us, and if that makes sense for your business, that's great. But if you're trying to get started, I think the best thing you can do is just create output every week. Be creating articles, be creating backlinks. And And I think in terms of learning it, the best thing to do, and the thing that that we always do, it's not so sophisticated, but when we start working with a website, the first thing, or with a client, the first thing we want to do is go and look at their competitors, because usually one of their competitors has invested in SEO, and our whole approach to SEO is take the top result and make it better by 10%, not 50%, not 100%, because at that point you're inventing something new. You're trying to create a new piece of content or a new approach to solving the question that someone has on Google. But that's not what Google wants. Google just wants little optimizations. By putting the number one article at the top, it has decided that that is the best way to answer the question. So you just want to iterate that, answer the question with a little bit more information, with a slightly different approach. But I think that's always a hard thing for people who are new to SEO to get their head around. They want to create the best content, and that is kind of what you're doing, but not by thinking about it from first principles or thinking about it from scratch. Just take the top result and make it better by 10%. And I think that's probably the most actionable SEO advice that I think I could give anybody starting. Look at the top result, make it better by 10%. Don't worry about anything else. That's all you have to do, and you'll probably succeed.
Mm-hmm. If I were to look for, not to throw any curveballs at you, but I'm just curious. I know it's a very competitive space. If I were to look for an SEO agency right now, where would you show on Google?
Oh, well, this is always the awkward part with SEO agencies, right? Which is our clients don't find us on Google. So you'll find us if you search our name, or if you search my name, we'll certainly be at number one. But if you search, I don't know, best SEO agency for SaaS, you won't find us. We don't play that game. Our customers aren't really Googling to find us. They're expecting references. They're expecting their network to help them find us. And so we rank great for our own name. We don't rank great for the word SEO. But we're not too worried about that.
Would it work for you, the same strategy, if you were to apply it to your company?
I think potentially. I think the problem is at the segment of the market that we are looking at, they typically don't Google for it. So I think if you're an SEO agency and you're helping, let's say, local solicitors or local lawyers get higher in Google, absolutely, you have to be ranking for that, and SEO has to be your acquisition channel. For us, the best thing that we can be doing is networking, is telling people about our techniques. Even cold email, things like that sometimes work for us. Ads don't work for us. SEO doesn't work for us. We have to be. We are an investment, and people have to build trust and see credibility to do that. And so they're typically not looking on SEO. That might be something that I change my opinion on in the future. In some ways we've just been growing so fast, and so we're so busy that we just have not even had time. And when you look at our website, hopefully it'll be different. We're working on a new website at the minute. It might be different by the time this goes live, but at the moment, it's embarrassing. We have a website from a year and a half ago. We haven't actually put any of our new clients on it. We haven't put any of our case studies on it, and so it's not a bad website, but it needs some tender loving care, and that is the same for our own SEO.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Lots of insights for me, and an update on the world of SEO. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it also. I was going to say I enjoyed it more, but I'm not quite sure. It was good fun having you. So everyone, the website for the newest insights on SEO is masse.com or co.uk.
It is masse.marketing. Masse with an E, so masse.marketing.
.marketing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nile.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Irina.
Thank you for listening to Grow and Learn. We hope that you found our podcast informative, engaging, and inspiring. Our mission is to help you keep growing and learning, and we hope that our conversations and insights have provided you with practical advice and useful perspectives. If you're looking for personalized support and guidance to help you achieve your personal or professional growth objectives, I offer a range of services to help. As a trusted management partner and mentor, I work with businesses in the process of transformation, looking for new streams of business, as well as M&A. With an extensive professional network of experts and mentors, I can bring on board the right person or team based on the specific needs of the company I'm working with. To learn more about the services I offer and how I can help you achieve your goals, visit my website at grownlearn.org. You can also reach out to me via email or social media. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grow and Learn, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and it helps us to continue to create content that is relevant and valuable to our listeners. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights and perspectives with you in the future.